Hi all, hope you're well. I just want to set out what the plan of action is for today's lesson. Thank you to those who have completed their work on the Elizabethan poor. As of Wednesday at 3:35 when I am recording this, I have half a class's worth. Now I know there are one or two of you who've spoken to me about that and that's absolutely fine. Everybody else, please make sure you get that work uploaded as soon as possible. I'm at the point where I'm going to be sending some emails home, so please make sure you upload your pictures of your work on the Elizabethan poor sooner rather than later, unless you've spoken to me about it. Same again goes for the questions on the Spanish Armada. Again, one or two of you have spoken to me when you were in art, and that's absolutely fine that you're catching that up. Everybody else, where is it? I am still outstanding 3.5, so please get those to me as soon as possible. Plan of action for today is these 3 8-mark exam questions. As I said, I've jiggled stuff around to just give you a little bit more time to get your work done. So we're going to do these exam questions this lesson, and then once you've had your lovely Easter break, where we can look, longingly outdoors, we will pick up the rest of Elizabethan England, doing a couple of lessons on theatre under Elizabeth, and then one wrapping it all up on whether or not there was a golden age. So that's all going to happen after Easter. Just right now, we're going to finish off our stuff on the poor. So I want to talk you through what it is we need to do for these 3 8-mark questions that I do want completed, please, by the end of today's lesson, so I can mark them over the Easter break. So please make sure you do them during lesson time. So the first question you have here is what was important about the problem of poverty in Elizabethan England. Now, the key thing to think about here is that for an important question, what we need to have a look at really is the impact of whatever the topic is, so the impact of poverty on Elizabethan England. We are not worrying about causes. You're not telling me all about the poverty. We're just looking at the impact that it has on Elizabethan England at the time. So things I would suggest we maybe have a think about for this question is, first of all, kind of the initial reaction of the people to this poverty. So particularly the gentry classes, the nobility, the fact that there is this little bit of fear around the poverty, the fact that it might upset the social hierarchy, the social order. All of this information can be found. I'm just going to show you here. There we go. Okay. Why were people worried about poverty? The kind of initial reactions to it. So fear, worrying about an upset to the social order, worrying about an increase in crime, worrying about the possibility of rebellion. So I think the first thing to really think about is what were ordinary, gentry classes, nobility classes' reaction to that. Sorry, I don't know why it keeps jumping. The second thing I think it would be really good to then have a think about as well is not just the people's reaction, but the point about this poverty is it forces the government to act. Okay, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next question. But the government basically has to start making, a decision about what they're going to do about this. And then as a result of, this poverty, what we see is an increase in the number of acts that are brought in to help the poor. So it's important because it forces local areas, like local towns, to have to tackle it. But it also forces Elizabeth to have to deal with it as well. So not only does it have this kind of initial reaction of sort of fear amongst the gentry, but it also forces the government and, local areas to take action in order to deal with it. So if we're thinking about 2 paragraphs, they would be maybe where I would be looking. And remember, our focus in our paragraphs is very much point, evidence, explain, with our explanation being, again, using this language, why was it important? So hopefully that first 8-mark question shouldn't be too complicated. So the next one we have here, question 2, is a write an account question of how the poor were dealt with by Elizabethan England. So we should know for a write an account question that what we want is 2 PEEs, just like the question above, but for this one, ideally, we would like to have it in chronological order. Okay, so when we look at kind of how it was dealt with, obviously the bits on our sheets we want to be looking at are these acts, and also the way the kind of towns have tackled it, and we want to be talking about, I think really, if we look at the initial acts, considering at a local level and what is happening at a local level, including, looking at places like London, Ipswich, Norwich and York, we would maybe want our first PEE on that local activity. And then obviously we notice that, the trend goes on as poverty becomes an increasing issue in Elizabethan England. It's tackled now more nationally. And actually, this is one we know that goes on for 230 years. So I think when we're looking at our response to this question, our two PEEs in chronological order, we might want to look first at the local approach and then at the national approach, and how each of those is addressed, how significant they are, and of course how that changes over the time period. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what to be talking about there. And then obviously your final question is this, change the pen colour for you, is this final question on convincing. How convincing is this interpretation? And this time specifically, guys, we're looking at the causes of poverty. Now, there's lots of things you can draw out here. There's quite a bold statement that talks here about unemployment being a major cause of poverty. There's loads you can talk about here, but there's lots of discussion in the book about soldiers and sailors coming back and there being unemployment for them there. The collapse of the trading market in the Netherlands causes issues for merchants in particular. One thing that it does make a very specific point about is unemployment that happens as a result of this arable to sheep farming. And a key topic you might want to look at here is the impact of these enclosures and what that does. There's really good stuff in your book on page 171 about this, and the fact that basically people have to leave the farms and try and move to London to find work. So there's definitely things you can talk about here. Closing of the monasteries we know happened under Henry VIII, and you can discuss those things here. So lots to pull out on this topic. Remember, what you need to do is draw 2 points from the extract and make sure that they are actually relevant to the question about the causes of poverty. And then you almost want to point, evidence, explain again. What's the point from the extract? What's my evidence to back that up? And how can I explain this evidence to show that this extract is convincing? And we just want to do that twice. So that's the plan of action, guys. We need to do these 3 8-mark questions in the lesson today, which should be Thursday's work. And hopefully that's given you a bit of a hint and a tip on where we need to be looking. All of it really is point, evidence, explain, and making sure we are explaining and linking back to the question set and staying really tightly focused on the question set. So I look forward to seeing these handed in at the end of the day for me to mark over Easter, along with any outstanding work. Obviously, if you guys have got any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch and I will get back to you. Enjoy.